How to properly cleanse a house of negative energy. Welcome to Trevor's Tarot, Astrology, and Spirituality. First of all, thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel um, and made comments on the videos. I really appreciate that. If you watch the videos and you're not subscribed, I'd really appreciate it. So, when I do a house cleansing, it is very involved, but I will give you the breakdown and then I will give you some tips on how to maybe pare it down a little bit because probably your house doesn't need to be super cleansed unless you really think there's some serious forces at work. Um, and you would know, right? The telltale signs that you need a house cleansing or you need to take some steps are one, do you feel like you're being watched? If you get that feeling like you feel like you're being watched and you're alone, that's probably a sign that a cleansing might help. Do you feel like you misplace things like your keys or the TV remote, but you feel really sure you set it on the, the kitchen island or whatever, and then it's not there? Chances are you really did misplace it. Spirits don't normally move things, although I think they can. Uh, Probably the bigger tell though for most people, if you live with a significant other or a child or a pet or some other living being, is there a particular spot in the house where you find yourself more likely to be bickering? That's a pretty good sign too that maybe you could benefit from a cleansing. Now, whether you need to do a deep cleansing or not, that is, I'll leave that up to you. I'll field some questions in the comments if you'd like, but chances are it's probably not that extreme. Now, what I do is I work with a realtor and a Hindu priest, and we will go into houses that the people that are either selling the house or the realtor thinks has like just an odd feel to it. This is not the same thing as something being haunted. So it's not the same. Now, the main thing for me when I walk into a house is I generally can tell kind of right away, provided I'm well rested. It's very important to be well rested. And I'm in the correct mindset, like I'm very meditative. I haven't just, watched the news, for example. That would probably not be the right mindset to go into one of these things. Um, and you just kind of feel. And then when I put my hands like this, my hands get really hot. Like I can concentrate energy and make it really, really hot. We'll talk about how you can use this to send well wishes to people later. Um, but you can infuse things with your energy. You also can feel them if you kind of go around and you keep your hands open. You can feel for certain spots in the house where there's more energy than other places. This usually, in my experience, happens in a few different places. Um, Bedrooms, particularly master bedrooms, are often the most energetic part of the house, as well as living areas like a living room or a den, a place where people watch TV and hang out. And then also like dining rooms, if there's like a formal dining room, not usually in a kitchen, and that's because the energy in the kitchen's constantly flowing because you're cooking things and things are moving around, and we'll talk about how we can use that to our benefit. Okay, so the first thing that you can do is, so this is a San Paulo stick. Uh, you can burn this, it helps remove some negative energy. You can also use this is white sage, like a sage smudge. most of these have burned a little bit. These are for my personal use at my home. I don't save the ones that I go into the really dark places. They get tossed. Um, and you generally, if you walk around with an abalone shell, you can let the ashes fall into here and you can kind of go through the house and burn these. This is what I would recommend, though. I think it's more effective, one. And two, it's just easier to use. You can just kind of sit here and, you light the lighter and you can see it's already smoking. You just kind of go around. Now, these can be somewhat pricey and hard to find. Another option as far as smoke, and if you have respiratory issues or allergies, you might not want to be there when somebody does this. You might want somebody else to do it for you. This is San Miguel incense. So it's the Archangel Michael's scented incense. It's pretty good too. And you can just light it and walk around with the incense stick and kind of clear energies. That's one thing you can do. Now, that's pretty basic. And if you're watching this video, you're probably looking for something a little bit stronger than that. Although that's a good preparatory step. So that would be the first step we'd do, is we'd walk around and we would sage, we'd use the San Paulo, we'd use the Archangel Michael, we might use all three, especially if it's a large house and you have multiple people walking around, one with each different um, item, one with sage, one with the incense, one with the San Paulo stick. By the way, if you can use the smoke is the most important part in my experience. So if you wanted to get, cheap incense from a store, where it's $1 for a pack of 10, it'll work. It really will. It's not as important as you might think. It's the smoke that's important. And also a little bit about, I'm going to consult my notes here because this is going to be quite long. A little bit about kind of a saying. So I generally say something to the effect of, may the sacred smoke remove all negative energy from the home and fill it with peace and positive energy. And I go through and I say something along those lines. Now, um, that's the most common quote that people list. I just say, may the smoke remove all unwanted negative energy and may it fill it with wanted positive energy, because sometimes there's wanted negative energy and that might seem contradictory, but you want energy that's going to keep you from doing things that are going to harm yourself. And that might be of a negative nature. So, um, so that's what I say. I say, may the smoke remove all unwanted negative energy and may it replenish all wanted positive energy. And again, there's positive energy that you might not want, such that the energy that can lead to like greed, that kind of stuff. So you have to be a little bit careful with your wording. So you can get something off the internet. That is off the internet. What I just told you is what I personally say. Okay. So if you want a deep, deep cleanse, we have to make some cleaning products. So this product I just bought off the internet. It's called Florida water. And I have it in just a spritz bottle. And I dilute it. This is almost all rubbing alcohol with a few other things. So I dilute it quite a bit. You can use this to clean to like, the countertops. You have to be a little bit careful if you have marble, probably not good there, but or if it's not sealed marble in particular. Okay, so let me get some stuff out of the way here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make something that's going to absorb negative energy. So there's a couple different crystals that can help with this. So this is something called smoky quartz. And you don't necessarily need to go out and buy these crystals. I'm not suggesting that you need to spend a lot of money. I'll show you a quick way to do it without them. And this is amethyst, really raw amethyst. It's kind of hard to see the purple, but it's there. What you can do is you can kind of give the jar a little squirt of Florida water to kind of remove anything. If you want, you can even sage the jar. So what we're going to do is we're going to put water in the crystals in the jar, and we're going to do this. So this is to remove negative energy. We are going to do this on the full moon, not actually the full moon though. So um, right after the full moon has been full. So let's say the full moon occurs at like 6 p.m. You'd want to start this process at like maybe 6:15. Give it a little while so that the moon is starting to wane. Because the idea is as the moon is shrinking, the energy shrinks, and we're going to want something that's going to shrink negative energy. And then all you do, and this is pretty simple, is you might put the crystals in the jar. Again, you don't need the crystals necessarily. And then you add water. I'm not going to add too much because I'm going to make a mess if I do. So now I use a really big jar, and it's all glass. It's important that it's glass and not plastic. Now, if you live in a place where the water is chlorinated, fill something up with water and let it set overnight. The chlorine will just go away. So, not super important that you do that, but kind of can help. Okay, so now the full moon's happened, and we're going to set in the light of the moon with our jar, and we're going to just kind of concentrate our energy like this, and we'll say, something along the lines of, let the waning moon power this water so that it can be used to remove unwanted negative energy. And we'll do this for probably 3 to 7 nights that the moon is there until it reaches about halfway point. Then I would stop. I think that's the most powerful part of the moon cycle personally. So this is I call this full moon water. It's not actually, some people call full moon water something else. So um, be careful. So the idea is the moon is shrinking, so that should take away negative energy. Then what I would do after we've saged and done the San Paulo sticks and the incenses in the house, we would have a spray bottle full of this, and it's just water, and that's important that it's just water with the crystals and the energies that we've infused in it, because we're going to spray this kind of all over, even sometimes on furniture. Furniture have a weird feel to them. So we don't want anything that's going to damage stuff. So we don't want any essential oils or anything like that. Nothing more than just the water, and then put it in a spritz bottle and go around the house and basically spritz the whole house. If there are some areas that are stronger than others, perhaps spritz it more. You might go over the house 2 or 3 times. If it's really bad, this is something that I might repeat 5 or 6 times. And while you're doing that, you're kind of letting your hands absorb those negative energies. And then it's important. It's hard to explain, but when you're doing that, your hands get hot, and then you can kind of just flick the energy away, or at least that's the way it works for me. Maybe that sounds a bit odd. But this is the way me and my friend who's a Hindu priest, this is kind of the motion we do: absorbing, flicking, and then spraying, spritzing with this water that comes from the new moon. You also, if you're of a Catholic denomination, you could use holy water. That would be kind of equivalent to this kind of concept. Okay, so that's the new moon water. Let me just take a sip of my tea. Okay. So after we have our new moon water, and the house is thought to be empty of negative energy. Now, will it be completely empty of negative energy? No, but we'll figure out a way to take care of that in a little bit. I'll show you some techniques for that. Now, this process is probably something you don't need to do for most things unless you're really feeling like, you're not sleeping well, you're feeling exhausted. Of course, it's not medical advice, by the way. Maybe see a doctor, make sure there's nothing medically wrong. If if you're just really uncomfortable in your house and that's not typical, maybe try this, like I say, 2, 3 days in the full moon. Do not, and this is, I was kind of putting off doing this and I had hesitated on doing this. Do not do this lunar cycle because of the eclipses. So I don't make this water during eclipse season. So um, don't do it during eclipses. Now, to store this water, I should say, so every night after the moon has set, or early in the morning, I put this in a dark cupboard, put a lid on it, put it in a dark cupboard. Ideally, the lid would be glass as well. This is just a mason jar I took out of the cupboard just for demonstration purposes. So you cover it, you'd stick it in um, a dark area. And the idea there is that the light is staying there and no new light is entering the jar. Okay. So now to put positive energy back in the house, we're going to do something very similar. And then we're going to do some practices that will help um, keep the negative energy away. Okay, so this is citrine and tiger's eye. Again, you don't necessarily need the crystals, but these are thought to absorb energy versus the amethyst and the tiger's eye is thought, I'm sorry, amethyst and smoky quartz is thought to repel energy. So the idea is you're putting that repelling ability into the water that we're going to use to remove the negativity. And now we're going to put crystals that absorb energy in the water that we're going to use to clean with. And so this, I think, would be worth doing. Now, again, I use a huge jar and I make a lot of this because, I mean, you just keep it in a dark cupboard, it'd be fine. So again, you want to pray over it, chant over it, whatever customs you might have, religious beliefs. And, so it's like, you do this like right after the new moon. So let's say the new moon was at 6 p.m. You might start this at 6:15. You might not be able to see the moon yet, but by the next day the moon will be just a slight sliver and it'll start to grow. And you'll say something like, infuse this water with the power of the growing moon. May the energy in this water help to expand positive energy wherever it is used. Something like that. And, pray over it. And you do this again for 3, 5, 7 nights. I like odd numbers. I think they're more effective. Um, but, make this your own, right? This is just a guideline. So you're praying over this. Now, this water I use in my house all the time. So um, but let's say we're doing a house cleansing. We put this in a different spritz bottle. We keep them very separate. Um, this has Florida water in it. It doesn't have moon water in it. Um, put it in a spritz bottle. We'd go back into the house that needs the cleansing, generally the next morning. And we basically spray everything down. And again, kind of now we're putting our energy out there. So we're kind of like, infuse the house with the positive energy coming, from my hands, and we'll think positive thoughts. Again, we want to make sure we're in a very meditative state, that we're not having any chatter in our brains about things that are bothering us. Um, And then I say something to the effect of like, I ask for the most benevolent outcome to this house cleansing. May all the unwanted negative energy be gone, and may all wanted positive energy be infused. Something along those lines. Again, make it your own. So that's for house cleansings. Now, once your house is cleansed, and probably most everybody's house is pretty close to that point, you can put this in like your mopping water. If you mop your floors, you can mix this with like the cleaning uh, agent that you use to like clean, countertops. You can also put this in your bath if you're feeling sluggish. I think that helps. Um, Now, if you're really careful and you don't use the smoke to do the jar and stuff, theoretically, some people do drink this. You can. I'm gonna leave that up to you. I'm not advising that because I don't want to. Um, it depends on how clean your crystals are and various stuff and what's going on with where you're storing this. Now, I do this by a window seal where the moon shines in my meditation area is where I make these waters. But you can theoretically, if you have to set it outside overnight, you'd probably want to put a lid on it, right? You don't want bugs in there, things like that. So, okay. So those are the two waters. So now the house is kind of theoretically it's cleansed. I'd wait a day. I'd walk back through the house to see if it feels better. If it doesn't feel better, I probably start over again from step one. If it feels better, which it usually does, like, probably 95 out of 100 times, the house feels much better already. Now we want to set up some things to keep the house going well. And I don't think I grabbed everything I wanted for this next step, but I think I can explain it just fine. So, one of the things you can do the next day is you can take these are just cinnamon sticks. I suggest going to like an ethnic grocery store, like an Indian grocery store. Things are much cheaper there because you can buy them in large quantities. You could take a cooking pot, like you'd make soup in, um, add 3, 5, or 7. Again, I like odd numbers, doesn't really matter though. Um, into the cooking pot with water, maybe add some allspice berries too. I just didn't bring any, but you can get those really cheap at those stores too. And just boil that. And then while it's still hot, you can kind of walk around and waft the smoke. And it kind of makes things smell good. It's one thing it does. But it introduces a smell that just naturally infuses positive energy. Cinnamon sticks are great for positive things. Maybe later, if you guys are interested, I'll talk about how you can use cinnamon sticks to like help manifest abundance and stuff like that. So boiling cinnamon sticks, wafting that through the house, I think helps infuse positive energy. Again, probably the most important part though is the meditation and the internal prayer where whether you're saying it out loud or not, of infuse this house with beneficial positive energy. May all unwanted negative energy be removed. And that's what I just constantly say that over and over again. And personally, I say it out loud. Some people don't think you need to say it out loud. It's up to you. Now, um, if you find there's a particular spot in the house where you find yourself bickering, or you walk through there and you start having like this really negative self-talk, or um, maybe that's the whole house. It could be. Maybe it's just an area where, like your dog barks all the time, and he or she doesn't normally bark all the time in other spots of the house. or, a spot where the cat doesn't want to go. Um, I have a cat who's 19 and he's pretty good about not going into spots that he doesn't like. Now, our house has been cleansed quite a bit, so there's not really those spots, but there was when we first moved into our house. So the thing that I recommend, this is a feng shui practice. I don't use it in the feng shui way. So this is just a jar full of salt. It can be sea salt, it can be table salt, it can be Himalayan salt. Doesn't really matter as long as it's salt. Probably shouldn't be Epsom salt though, because Epsom salt has some other things in it. So um, now the traditional way of doing this is you use money. I just don't think that's the right message to send the universe, so I don't do that. I use these are just washers. I went to the hardware store. This box of like 100 washers was, I don't know, $2 maybe, something like that. And you take six, and six is the number that is suggested by the feng shui practices as being a number that will remove energy. And you put these around the jar like this. So now there's six washers in the jar. And what you'll do, because you're going to throw this jar away, so make sure you don't use your favorite jar. This jar is going to get thrown away at the end of this process. Now, what I like to do is I put this inside of something that's a little bit more conspicuous, easy to hide. So I might set it inside of a flower pot. You can also set it on like a paper plate. You could set it on the jar lid if it's big enough. Doesn't really matter. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna add water to this, and you'll see it starts to bubble as the water goes down. If you can see the bubbling, but the water will start to absorb into the salt. And you'll put this in a spot in a room that you think needs energy cleansed. This really, I think, is one of the most effective ways to get rid of like the day-to-day negative energy that comes out of our TVs or comes out of our mouths when we're not maybe watching our words correctly. Or maybe we are watching our words correctly and we mean to be negative. There's nothing wrong with that either. And so, if I were going to put this in like, say, my office, I would put this in here, and then I would put this on the top of the bookshelf, and I would just let it sit there. And you let it set for 6 months, add water as needed. So probably in 1 month, you'll need to add water, and then probably again on 3 months, and then 5 months. Usually that's about the way it works. And you'll see that the salt starts to crystallize and starts to grow on the outside of the jar. So you can just Google salt cures and see images of them. The crystals will grow all the way to the outside. That's why you want it in something. Otherwise, it's going to make a mess on whatever you're setting it on. So you can put that there. So like in a house that really needed a good cleansing, I might use up to 20 or 30 of these. Now, this is depending upon whether the clientele are wanting this to happen, right? If it's a house that you're about to sell, start this as soon as you can, try to leave it as long as you can, but you probably are going to want to maybe not want people to see it. But if it's your own house, you can leave it up to 6 months. And after the 6 months are up, and this is important, during the 6 month, try not to touch it. The idea is that all the negative energy is in here. So, and again, you pray over it. You can tell the salt and the spirits what you want this to do. I want this to absorb all the negative, unwanted negative energy in this room. And you can put it in various spots. Now, depending upon the size of your house, you might want more than one. Like you might want one in your bedroom, again, conspicuously hidden so that you just don't really even notice it's there. You might want one where you watch TV or where you gather. You might want one in the entryway. Um, generally you don't need them in bathrooms unless the bathroom is also a laundry room. Then occasionally you might want one there. And do as many as you want. I don't think you can overdo it. Now, feng shui will say you should put this in various, very specific parts of the house. I don't necessarily think you need to do that in my experience. Now, I'm not a feng shui expert. If you want to follow feng shui, you should consult somebody that really knows what they're doing in regards to that. And then at the end of the 6 months, so okay, first of all, if you're adding water to this, make sure you wash your hands afterwards. Make sure you're very meticulous about not touching it, and you wash your hands anytime you're going near it, or interacting with it, I should say. It's okay if you're near it, just if you're interacting with it, make sure you wash your hands. Um, Now, at 6 months is when this is probably going to be done, probably going to need to redo them. What I do is I go around with one of those big construction trash bags that I know won't leak. And I go through and I put all of them in the trash bag, tie up the trash bag, put it in the trash can, take it to the curb right away, and wait for them to pick it up. So I'll do this like the morning of trash day. Um, you don't want it setting around too long. And then make sure you wash your hands and probably take a shower just to cleanse yourself afterwards. And then you can uh, go about your day. So that's kind of the essence of how to do, a basic house cleansing. The more complicated the energies are in a house, you might have to get a little bit more creative. You might, need to use some candles, some essential oils on candles generally. And we can certainly talk about that if you're more interested in that. And then we can start to focus on perhaps ways to infuse positive energy into the house besides just the new moon water, um, and the cinnamon, boiling cinnamon. So anyhow, I hope that was helpful. Leave me a comment. Thanks, everyone.